Well then, we probably will get this started just in a moment. If you're in the chat, do make yourself known. There's obviously going to be a few people watching. There's definitely a few people in already, so let's make sure that gets rocking and rolling. What we're going to do, let's hit that button there. Let's feed that down there. Just turn all that off for a minute. Hello. Here we are again, apparently. Let's just shuffle that way. Bring that down. Oh, dearie me. What a day. Well, what a few days, eh, everybody? And we'll just give everyone another moment or two just to get in. Mac has managed half a word. But a few people in there. So, oh, dearie me. A few people, like I say, make yourself check. There we go. Managed to make the whole word in there, Jamie. Nice job. A few people popping into chat. Like I said, we'll just give everyone another moment or two just to get in, and then we'll get rocking and rolling, because I'll explain what we're going to try and do. I'm going to do that so I can sit in front of the light again. I am wearing my Hansa Rostock shirt today because they won yesterday in the 103rd minute or something like that of a league game, which was mental. Right, you know what? Like, can't put this off any longer, can we? Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary. It's Sunday night for once, and it's 8 PM, and welcome back to welcome to a very special BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell. For those of you who don't know and are brand new to what we do here, this is a stream where we go through all the bits and pieces that happen with the National Ice Hockey League structure. We're here generally throughout the season, Wednesday nights, 8 PM, and we look at absolutely anything and everything that's happened, all the news, all the results and everything. We focus on the National Division. That's our bread and butter, our home port, but we try to have a good look at absolutely everything from across the National, as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north and in the south. And we're here, of course, because, like I said, let's all do some Sunday evening reading, shall we, everybody? We're going to go through tonight. The sole focus is just going to be going through all of the madness of the last couple of days because, of course, Friday we had a resolution to this situation with the Sheffield Steel Dogs. The knowledge that they will play in the 2023-24 National Ice Hockey League National Division season, but there is a lot of stuff that's come out over the last couple of days. 2 press releases in particular, one from the league itself and one that's come from Planet Ice, the biggest operator of ice rinks, certainly within Great Britain, although we'll touch on a few bits and pieces like that in a minute. A bit of housekeeping before we start. bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, that is my website where I've been writing about British hockey now since 2011, 12 years worth of stuff there. It started with a focus on the Basingstoke Bison and of course has sort of spread out into talking about the National Division, and of course with the Bison not playing this year, another mention of Planet Ice, we're obviously, the website is going to pivot and we're going to be talking about all kinds of bits and pieces. I'm going to be going to games in a bunch of different places and we're going to cover stuff like that. We also have our hockey story series, which encompasses a bunch of things, but it's usually long form content, both written and kind of visual. It goes all the way back from the 19th century to the current day, behind the Iron Curtain, into war itself, all kinds of things, players, officials, content creators, all referees. We've had all kinds of things, as well as recently over this summer as well, although it's kind of paused at the minute for obvious reasons. Been doing a sort of series of video interviews with sort of important folk from within the National Division, owners, player coaches, those kind of things. Also, there's our free to download tabletop game Dice Hockey, a bunch of stuff there on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Twitter, Facebook, those links are down there in the description, and you're watching us on YouTube. So please press subscribe and hit the notification bell and do all of those lovely algorithmic things that make this stuff get more noticed. Because when the season begins, every Wednesday night, 8 PM we're here. We've been rocking here on YouTube now for a little while, and we've built up quite a sort of a fun sort of community, and obviously now there's going to be a few more eyes on the National Division. So this is the first, and as far as we're our only show that does this kind of stuff live. So if you want to come along for the ride, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and like I say, links in the description to our Twitter, to Facebook, and to buy me a coffee. That'd be fantastic. Like I say, the busking hat does go round. Costs for me are going to go up a little bit this year because I'm travelling around more and doing some different things. So if you want to contribute to the uprunning, BOTW stuff's always going, stuff on YouTube's always going to come out for free. Stuff there is there on the website to read. But if you'd like to contribute to the running, hit the link down below. Chuck us a couple of quid. It's always appreciated, and it goes straight back into doing all of this stuff, which is appreciated. The other thing, of course, is that we have the chat, which should be over here. Feel free to use the chat, but of course, please do remember the golden rule here on the What's Current stream: DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings. Now, certainly Wednesday night, everybody behaved brilliantly, and I massively appreciate that. I said it was cool to disagree. Disagreement is not disaster, never is. And this was about having a conversation. I said, let's all try to be adults on the internet, and we were adults on the internet. And I'm actually super, super proud of the folk that were there, because this is a very emotive topic. People potentially losing a team, the state of British ice hockey. These things are held very, very dearly to a lot of people's hearts, mine included. And essentially, we did really, really well in terms of having what was like a really good, solid adult discussion. Can we try and do that again? And we'll kind of roll on from there. Let's see how we do. What's Max said? I'm a dick. Am I still allowed in here? I said you're not allowed to be a dick in the chat. Being a dick in general is absolutely fine. What you do in your own time is your own business. It's just the chat that I'm concerned about, mate. Knock yourself out. And also, Celtic one. You should be in a good mood. Anyway, what we're going to do is I'm going to press this button, and that should transfer things, shuffle things around, and there we go. There's me, and here we are, and there is the first of the two press releases. So what we're going to do in terms of tonight, you can see over there that you've got the. I'll turn my hand the right way. There you go. There, we've got the press release. We're going to put the press release up in here. I know it's not super easy to read, but we're going to kind of work through it like that. And what we're going to do, we're just going to work through bits and pieces. We're going to stop. I'm going to chuck out my thoughts and my opinions on kind of bits and pieces. Stick your opinions in the chat as well. I'll keep sort of periodically kind of dipping back because I've got to kind of swap windows on my computer to be able to read stuff. Get your opinions out. That's absolutely fine. Like I say, let's just keep it respectful and let's keep it sensible. The one thing I've tried to do here on Banners on the Wall the entire time is be fair and make sure that that I've got an opinion that I'm happy to stand on. There are bits of information I'm aware of. And like I say, anything I talk about on here is stuff that I can confirm and I can use. So it's stuff that I've been given that I can verify, and it will work from there. That's a lot. At least you're honest, Mac. It's probably my favourite thing about you. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to work through the press release, and we'll talk about bits and pieces in chunks kind of as we go. I don't know how long it'll end up being tonight as a result. Worst case, we'll kind of do what we did on Wednesday. We'll talk about the big topics, and then we'll kind of, if we need to at the end, we want to kind of throw it open to a few bits, then we'll throw it open to a few bits. Let's see how the mood takes us. But either way, let's quickly get into that first statement. Now, this is a statement that came out on Friday afternoon. This one came out about 4:30. And this one's up on the EIHA's website, which, as you can see there, Planet Ice, National Ice Hockey League, all systems go. What I'm going to try doing, if I do that, is that a bit easier for people to read if I've put that up on the screen and I've done that like that? Hopefully so. So here we are then, what we've got from the EIHA release, the release that came from the league. So this was Friday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. An agreement has been reached for Sheffield Steelers to acquire Sheffield Steel Dogs, and that agreement will allow Sheffield Steel Dogs to fully participate in the Planet Ice National Ice Hockey League in the 2023 season and beyond. Now, aside from the grammatical errors, first point here, this is good. I don't know whether people have been confused. I personally have not used didn't use the Let's Dogs Play hashtag, and that was because I was trying to do a lot of reporting on bits and pieces. Steel Dogs aren't my team. Let's get this on the record right now. This is good. I said Wednesday night that a national division without a Sheffield-based team in it was ridiculous because of how much of a hockey town Sheffield is. So the fact that we've got a resolution to that situation is good. I did express my concerns and my worries about the Sheffield Steelers and Tony Smith running a team in the national division because of his past statements about British development, British players, the quality of players coming through. Because Tony Smith and I have a fundamental disagreement on the quality of those players and how that should be done. Now, I'll say it again openly. Tony, if you want to come and have a chat to me, let's go have a chat, because I think actually people would really, really appreciate it. Not because it'd be two people arguing, but because we have two very, very different points of view. And I think that would make for a really, really important discussion that British hockey needs to have, because there's a lot of different arguments in this about how we best develop British players, and actually let's have that conversation. And I think it'd be really, really interesting to see. And now, as I said on Wednesday, it's not my decision. You're now part of the national division, which is the thing I cover, and I think I cover it pretty well. So if you want to come on and have a chat about that, Tony, open invitation. You can come on whenever you want. We'll make it work. Don't you worry about that. But the Steel Dogs are in. That is massive. That is impressive. That's the thing we want to see. We also, of course, have the news that they are going to be led by Jason Hewitt. He is the new player coach. John O'Phillips is on board, which is massive for them. An interesting looking roster for the Dogs. I'm going to wait till everything's kind of sorted, settled, but we'll kind of look at that later as we get into pre-season and the like. So, the Planet Ice National Ice Hockey League is pleased to confirm that 11 teams will compete in the 23-24 season. The Steel Dogs organisation needed to evaluate some financial and operational restructuring options, resulting in Tony Smith taking ownership of the Steel Dogs. Tony has confirmed that the Steel Dogs will be sustainable and compliant moving forward. Now, the interesting bit there is the last bit of that sentence, right? Because financial and operational restructuring options, and they will be sustainable and compliant moving forward. That choice of words means potentially is problematic, because what rule did they break? Compliant to what? Now, my understanding, and we went through the rules of competition on Wednesday night, there's not tons in there about what financially you need to do. There was talk, of course, in that bit we read about people being involved in ownership of bits and pieces when the entity has gone into administration. But something clearly wasn't done there. So that's a bit of an interesting choice of wording, in my opinion, on that part. However, the important thing is, and the thing we kind of guessed if Tony Smith was going to be taking over, is that the Dogs will be on a firm footing going forward. That's what we like to see. Excuse me. So next, it's for these reasons that the fixtures have been delayed, and not for any other reason speculated. The league will begin on Friday the 22nd of September when Peterborough face Hull in the opening fixture, with a programme of 11 games across the opening weekend. Okay, so we obviously now know the fixtures are out. It's obviously mentioned a bit anyway. But we know that the league opener comes Friday the 22nd of September at Planet Ice in Britain. The Peterborough Phantoms and the Hull Seahawks will open up the National Division for 23-24. League competition runs until Sunday the 31st of March, followed by playoffs across the next three weekends with two groups of 4 teams. So having had quarterfinals last year, we would go back to the group stage that we had before, which gives teams more games in the playoffs and kind of incentivises the playoffs a little bit more, I suppose. The commentary finals weekend will take place on the 27th and 28th of April 2024. Massive thanks for that, because one, it's whoppingly massively clear of Easter, which is really, really helpful. It's my dad's birthday. I'll have to work my way around that one myself. But good to know the big key dates, so people can start booking up the Ramada in Coventry already. Wonderful stuff. The full fixtures will be available in the coming days, and we look forward to the start of the season. So, nothing hugely dramatic and astronomically world-breaking there, albeit, like I said, that second paragraph, this bit here, is the bit, of course, that, like I say, the bit that interests me more than anything else. Like I say, because if nothing else, you can read the last accounts for the Steel Dogs as a limited company. Company's house. It's public information to go and read it. Were the Steel Dogs accounts in the red? Yes, they were. Were they in the red to the point where a company would be able to kind of shuffle along carrying that level of debt? Yeah. So what's happened? What's at this point where they got to a point where they were potentially unsustainable and non-compliant for that choice of wording in there? And that's the thing, that's the bit that probably is going to end up staying behind closed doors for some time. Because if something's gone skew, really, for the sake of transparency, it would have been really helpful if they'd actually said what that was. And this was something that we bemoaned on Wednesday night. That level of transparency. If something has happened and there was a thing where as well, because all this talk about potentially blocking Tony Smith from being an owner of the Steel Dogs, this was a thing that happened. That's that's something I've been able to verify. I can stand on that reporting. So what's changed there as well? And maybe this was a case of parties just kind of seeing the light of day, or just deciding not to die on that hill. And maybe when we look at the other press release in a couple of moments, maybe we'll get some better ideas on that one. Let's have a look at what we've got in the chat very briefly, because obviously a few things are in there. Mac's been very busy, I can see. Tony Smith made a bid for the Steel Dogs. That's a fact, we know that. That was blocked by some league owners and a third party. From my knowledge, there was also another bid on the table. We'll talk about that in a minute. That bid was to take ownership of the team with no money coming back the other way. What else has Mac said here? I'll come back to you in a minute there, Sir Az. Why are they making a statement when they aren't owners of teams in the league? Also, if they've gone out of their way to make this statement, why haven't they given absolute clarity where the 50k is going and the specifics of where is this being allocated, being spent? I think the argument, we'll talk about that last bit in a moment, Mac, just because obviously that's much more heavily involved in that second press release. Who else have we had drop in? The boys from Macca's Talk Hockey are in. Hello. Niles in. Hello. The EIHA statement I found surprisingly okay. However, the PI statement seemed like it was written by a passive-aggressive teenager with an English GCSE. At least it was grammatically correct, Saz. But like I say, we're going to focus on that one a bit heavily in a moment. Thomas Graham of the Wildcast. Don't blame PI for making a statement given the amount of rumours and chat about them. They're entitled to have their say. I actually agree, and I think that's one thing people have kind of looked past a little bit. What they said was massively misguided and at best, and unhinged at worst. Thank you, Tom. Ha 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 ha. Transparency. Hi, Anthony. Hello to the boys from Door 14. Thanks for joining the party. So that press release, that one from the EIHA, comes out at about 4:30. Why the EIHA have put it out rather than the National League Owners Group, I don't know. However, in some ways, the EIHA is where this press release should come from. I did talk about on Wednesday the fact that one thing the EIHA had not done very well was this idea of just actual governance. In these kind of things where you've got an issue where clubs have a disagreement, these guys are meant to be the arbiter. We talked on Wednesday about the fact the National League's executive committee were the only people who could say yes or no on ownership of teams and those things being approved. So the fact the EIHA have put out this statement is actually where it should go, really. I think it's an odd moment of the governing body actually doing the governing bit. Admittedly, they probably should have done a little bit more of this earlier from what we've been made aware of, and the fact that we almost had a team kicked out by the other teams and there was no talk about why, what for, or anything else. That's the problematic bit on that one. Just having a quick squeeze there. People are firing stuff towards me on that. That's fine. But yeah, so at least by the time most of us were getting to finish work on Friday, we knew that we were going to have an 11-team national division. The bases at Bison, of course, are paused. They step out till 2024-25, so we're told. And we have our 11 teams. The Steel Dogs are able to continue. I still massively hold a lot of reservations about it and the new ownership, but those are my reservations to hold. The key thing is that we have got the key thing is that we've got the Steel Dogs in the league. That's really what we needed. And like I say, it's big for a hockey town like Sheffield to have that line of teams all the way through. To not have the Steel Dogs there would be problematic. The only thing EIHL did well was poo their pants. However, I don't really blame them for the circumstances they were facing. I mean, yeah, it's certainly unprecedented in that sense, but it's their job to take control of that situation. If they're running the league, they're in charge. Act like you're in charge, or at least pretend to act, or at least pretend you're in charge, and try and be a bit more forceful in what's going. Either way, we will then change to the next tab, which should pull this up in a moment when it all loads. It's just loading again. We're going to have to... stupid Wizard of Oz advert. That's not going to come up very well, is it? We're going to have to drop that down, and I'm just going to have to read this out, I think, unfortunately. So sorry the text is going to be a bit small. We're just going to have to work with what we've got because it doesn't fit in the box very well, unfortunately. What I will do, if you want to have it up on your own screens, there's the I'll put the link in the chat for people so that they can pull the statement up and read it themselves. So let's get into a couple of bits and pieces about this statement first, because I was the first person to put this out into the world, and I'll explain what happened. My understanding was, from what I've been told, at least the conversation I had with them afterwards, is that I was given this statement. Planet Ice put this towards me at around 5:20 on Friday evening. So I was back at home, sat down with my son causing havoc around me, as most 6-year-olds do. And I made the point of, giving it to me is fine. Where are you putting it up yourselves? And are you just going to stick it on THF and leave it at that? And we talked about this on Wednesday night as well, those parallels we were starting to see to the situation with the Manchester Phoenix back in 2015, when the Planet Ice stuck a press release on THF and announced that the Storm were coming back and the Phoenix were out of Altrincham. And I said, like, where are we going with this? Why are you giving this to me? And they said, it's yours to do with what you want. Which left me with a thing of, okay, I have this thing. Can I have this? I've got this thing. My thing is about getting the stories to people. So let's get it out there. And I'll touch on something because I quote tweeted it out there. And Rob Hitchin, who's run the Pyre for a very, very long time, an old Manchester Phoenix fan, said I was being a vessel for Planet Ice. Now, I massively respect Rob. And Rob, as a Phoenix fan, and all the Phoenix fans, went through a lot. And there was a lot of bad faith and a lot of bad actions created at that time. I said out loud the other day, I'll say it again here, I'm a vessel for no one but myself. I am independent of every other entity in British ice hockey for a reason. Do I have contacts and relationships with people around the sport? Yeah, I do. I have contacts within Planet Ice, I have contacts within the EIHA, I have contacts within EIHA, I have contact with a lot of owners and players and stuff like that around the country. But I am a vessel to nobody. And listen, I don't blame, this isn't about taking a pot shot at Rob. This is me setting the record straight. Because Rob made a statement that I felt was misguided and I felt was a little bit unfair, because the fact Planet Ice gave me the statement maybe is more just in a sense that they felt I'd be fair with it. I don't know. But I work for no one. I work for no one but myself. Banners on the Wall is independent for that reason. I work with a lot of people because I believe in collaboration. Collaboration over competition, I think, is the way that you push things forward. And that's it. And like I say, this isn't about, I'm just trying to reiterate this to people because I don't like what was said because it was unfair and it was incorrect about me. But I think the important thing is to kind of say as well that I get why people would worry and I get why people would say that, and I just want to kind of address that, draw a line under it, and then we'll move on. So yeah, I got the statement before everybody else, and I put it out, and then we started seeing the really weird thing, which is firstly, Planet Ice put a statement on their own website. When was the last time they did that about anything to do with British hockey? Which is a bit disconcerting. And then the other teams started putting it up. Not the Steelers and the Steel Dogs, obviously, but a lot of the other teams put this up as well. Either way, let's have a bang through this statement from Planet Ice. So this originally came out via Banners on the Wall. We were the first people to get this, so I got it into the public domain as quickly as I could. That was about 5:20 on Friday. Everybody else started putting it up around 6. But let's have a go for it. Like I say, on the Planet Ice website, which is how you know it's serious. Due to the unprecedented social media speculation regarding the recent situation involving the Sheffield Steel Dogs, it's felt that now the situation is concluded, Planet Ice should make a statement. Okay, point 1. All right, fine. Everything's tied up with a nice neat bow. Now you're opening your mouths. I still think somebody should have said something a little bit sooner to just try and kind of direct people as to what was going on. But maybe we'll die on a different hill right now. Okay. Late in June 2023, Planet Ice were made aware by Ali Cree of a situation involving the Sheffield Steel Dogs relating to their financial issues, and Planet Ice were happy to provide advice and guidance when the Steel Dogs approached them for support. At a meeting of all the owners of the teams in the league, Ali Cree painted a picture of being subjected to a hostile takeover and made it clear that he wished to continue running the Steel Dogs. This clearly concerned everyone at the meeting. Now, I don't have anything I can verify 100%. I have seen evidence to the effect of a hostile takeover. What that involved and who that involves, I can't confirm. But was there a situation involving that? My understanding, like I said, I've seen evidence to support that claim. I have not seen evidence to support the claim that involved the Sheffield Steelers. So let's put that part to one side. Because I know some people were thinking that the hostile takeover was the Sheffield Steelers. It was not. For anything I think of Tony Smith's past comments, this is not to do with him. So let's get that bit straight. Any talk of that bit of a hostile takeover did not involve the Sheffield Steelers. They are now the owners of the Sheffield Steel Dogs. That's come as a result of a bunch of other stuff. But that part does not involve them. So if that was part of what you thought that meant, no. Can confirm that didn't happen. There we go. So obviously, concern amongst the owners at that meeting. At the same time, Planet Ice were also aware that a unanimous decision had been made by the teams participating in the Planet Ice National Ice Hockey League National Division to form their own legal entity to oversee league operations, and were in discussions with both the English Ice Hockey Association and Ice Hockey UK regarding obtaining an agreement to operate a new legal entity in the future. Now, that was obviously discussed a fair bit in the reporting by Bob Westerdale, and it is something that from my perspective, one thing I can confirm is that these kind of discussions with EIHA have been going on for some time. And from my understanding, the beginning of 2023. I've mentioned it on the show before. That's not new news in my that you're hearing from me. So we'll work on there so we can go on that from that point on there. This bit of news that they potentially look to spin off the national division to become a separate entity in the BNL to the Super League and the Elite League kind of thing that isn't new news. That shouldn't surprise anybody in that sense. The fact it's coming to fruition, that bit is the bigger bit of news here. That if the owners have in fact agreed to actually go down that step and to remove the national division from the EIHA's purview, and that they're going to be allowed by EIHA to stand alone as an independent entity, that's something that isn't in and of itself a bad idea. My worry is, and I think what will be the concern of many, is how this opens up the national division to potentially becoming EIHL2 and purely just kind of sitting as as nothing but like a watered down product to just try and feed guys onto fourth lines in elite league teams. I'm not sure that's quite going to happen. I don't think it will go to that extent, but I think there's certainly going to be a concern with that from some people. What we then move on to, though, is the next large chunk here. Planet Ice now understands that all relevant discussions have concluded, and a fee of £50,000 to enable an Elite League team to also operate a National League team has been paid to the EIHA. This fee will be used to set up the Planet Ice National Ice Hockey League National Division as a standalone league starting from the 24-25 season. Firstly, where's that in the rules? Where's that in the rules of anything at all? But what that speaks of is the fact that that money has been used to do some of the legwork and the money work that will be needed to get the bits and pieces started for the National Division as an independent entity as and when it comes. Now, is £50,000 enough to do that? Probably not. But it is a nice bit of starting change. And effectively what you end up with there, especially when you come to the next line, it is understood that any other Elite League team wishing to operate a team in both the Elite League and the National League going forward will be required to pay £50,000 to the new league to cover operating expenses. Again, aside from the fact we're pulling rules out of thin air, What you've got there effectively is your franchise fee. If other teams want to walk down the line of operating national division teams in this way to have their own, effectively, their own farm team, development team, affiliate team, however you want to label that, that's your franchise fee. And obviously, clubs when they go into the Elite League, new teams have to pay a franchise fee. There are fees, from my understanding, that new owners have to pay when they take over. That's kind of in the same way. The fact is a number, like I say, the fact it's a number literally plucked out of thin air, and who has decided that £50,000 is what you pay is a very interesting decision. And how they've come to that, again, that's one of those things that should be documented. How and why and what's the purpose of the money, which has already been pointed out earlier in the chat. It's a bit of a strange one. It is a bit of a strange one on that front, because where is it going and what is it doing? That is the big thing. £50,000 in British ice hockey could probably take you quite a long way. I think because we worked out like last summer when they were talking about the salary cap for the national division of being £4,000 a week gross, and the £4,000 a week gross for a 32-something season meant you were going to end up spending roughly, if you spent to the cap, you'd end up spending around 230 something grand over the course of a season. Like, that's a sizable chunk of your wage bill for the year. So the fact that that's £50,000 is not an unsizable amount of money to drop in British hockey. That's a player. Like, that is a decent player or two or three for the season worth of money just for operating expenses, all things considered. So I don't, like I say, the fact that this is being thrown around as a number is interesting. It does provide a bit of a barrier to entry, because I don't think it would be an unreasonable thing to assume that Fife can't afford 50k, and Dundee can't afford 50k, and maybe the new clan owners can afford 50k, but Manchester probably can't. Nottingham might, Belfast might, and kind of what happens from there is quite hard to determine. And it's like I say, the fact that Sheffield have chucked a chunk of money at it. Like I say, Sheffield have paid a chunk of money, and effectively it allows the bigger teams in. Nottingham can probably pay it, maybe Cardiff, Coventry probably can't. And what it allows the bigger teams in the Elite League to do is to have their say and their steering of any potential direction in the national division, without allowing the Elite League as an entity and allowing all the clubs to kind of put in their, have their say. Because what happens if the top teams alone hoard the top end British talent? What about those? What happens in that case of, if you've got an 11-team division, 12 if you bring back Basingstoke, and 4 teams have their own affiliate team each? Or do you potentially get a thing like, do teams team up? Maybe Coventry and Manchester get together, and let's do this as an example. Would Coventry and Manchester, for example, be allowed to put together 25k to pay that fee to operate Telford as a development team? Is that going to be allowed? Could the Scottish teams put together a bid to buy out the new owners of Solway and operate Solway in that kind of sense? It's a bit of an odd way of going about it and doing it, and I don't really, like I say, it's been plucked out of absolute thin air, and it's just very, very hard. Let's have a quick squint at the chat just in case, just as we're sort of working our way through. Some teams shared the statement, minus the first couple of paragraphs, perhaps showing some morals. I'm glad there's some left in hockey at this level. make your own jokes. Ali didn't ask to meet Planet Ice. That's a fact. He met an independent intermediary. The fact you've put independent there in quote marks is an interesting choice there, Mac. If an EIHL 2 league comes to pass, Anthony, how should that work? We'll talk about that, Jamie, at the end, I think. Let's talk about that at the end. Let's focus on the press release for now. I read that as an elite league, teams can have a B team in the new league. Like I say, Kev, we'll talk about that in a moment. What a ludicrous sum. If you're that bothered about financial spending and strength, then why not have a transparent salary cap? Something I've been shouting about for ages. And over a load of teams who overspent last season. That 50k fee was put in place for other reasons. I actually think that 50k thing was put in there, and like Sir Azza said below you, Mac, operation expenses more sounds like an FU pay me, doesn't it? Doesn't it half in that sense, in the way that they've written it? How many leagues seems to envision looking to enter the league? Also, do you think potentially own them or their facilities? Well, given the fact that not many of the teams in the National Division own their facility, I'd be very, very surprised if they bought the facilities to go with it. Telford, for example, if you wanted to buy Telford, the Telford and Wrekin Council are not going to sell the ice rink. So you'd buy the Tigers and work it that way, would be my thing. I don't see any other team buying up another NIHL team. Sheffield was a unique situation with the City having an EIHL and non-NIHL side. Can't see any other teams potentially being bought. I'll throw this out there, Chris, because I think this opens up a situation for a couple of different things. I think this opens up Nottingham to look at Peterborough or potentially Telford. I think it opens up Cardiff to look at Bristol, I think is what it opens up for. Obviously, our friends in the north are not going to immediately sell to any of the Scottish teams. I don't think Manchester have the financial resources to do that, from my understanding. I don't think it's in Belfast's interests, given their distance, to do that. I mean, Belfast actually for Solway would be an interesting one, because they've obviously got a few guys there. Mason Alderson Biddulph, of course, announced today. Kel Beattie are on two-way contracts between the Sharks and the Giants. There's quite a well-worn path of youngsters from the Giants SNL side to Solway to back to Belfast. So I don't. Probably a dumb question, but say Nottingham Lions, Cardiff Fire, and other second teams from D1 and D2 decide to move to national, will they still have to pay a fee? And I think that goes in with that ties in a little bit with what Mac has asked here. Will the Storm pay 50k if they drop down, or will they be exempt? So it's the fee from what they have said there. If we're taking what Planet Ice have read as gospel, and please, I know, try to control your laughter at that one. The fee is for an elite league side to operate a national division team. So in the way that Sheffield have bought, in the Steelers have bought the Steel Dogs, there is a 50k fee attached to that. If the Manchester Storm remove themselves from the elite league and wish to enter the national division, to me that says they shouldn't have to pay that 50k potentially. They might be asked to do that in that sort of sense. Maybe they're asked for 50k to do that, to kind of contribute. Asking the Nottingham Lions or the Cardiff Fire, or most of the teams in Divisions 1, no Division 2 side is going to step up 2 divisions, but asking a Division 1 side to pay 50k, it's not going to happen. Not without a massive influx of capital. In the way, obviously, the good Mr. Strange has just stuck in the chat there, Solway not for sale. But Solway, of course, benefited massively from the fact that John and Phil had obviously looked to buy the Clan. That didn't come to fruition, and you had guys who were willing and prepared to buy an Elite League franchise able to be involved in the National Division team instead. Teams last season were denied access to information to prove others were operating within the wage cap. Absolute farce. Yep, we shouldn't have one if we can't get to it properly. MK have a link with Belfast as well, with Max Stewart, for example. They do, Jamie, but the link with Solway is arguably stronger because of the movement of players from, like I say, from the Giants SNL to the Sharks, and then Sharks upwards, when you've had people like, when you've had Kel Beattie's obviously been there a while. You've had the Hamill boys there as well, so there's links there, but I personally don't think Belfast are about to buy a national division team. If I hear any different, I'll tell you. Let's get back to the press release here, because this is where we start getting into the. You can disagree with bits and pieces in this top part, but it's not been too bad. We start getting into the slightly dicier territory here at the moment after this. Clearly, there is a significant risk to the current league and teams if one of the teams spends significant amount more, great grammar, on players than the other teams, as happened only a few years ago when Red Hockey became involved. It is understood that assurances have been made by the Steel Dogs that they will operate on a similar basis to other teams in the league. Now, I saw somebody talk about the fact that Wayne Skull's living rent free in people's heads still. Red Hockey blew up the second tier of British hockey. The EPL was actually not that bad. It was run on a relatively sensible footing, and it all went to pot because we ended up with a ridiculous arms race and stupid money, and Telford £500,000 in the hole. Again, it's on Company's House. Go and read it. And Telford's the previous owning entity of Telford, who are not connected with Mike Washburn and here. The gloss of the EPL was massive. And I only have to kind of redirect you back to my interview with Aaron Nell that I did relatively recently for some thoughts on that. Whilst all parties involved in the situation understand the passion of the ice hockey community, Planet Ice would like it noted that the social media campaigns instigated by 2 or 3 individuals have not influenced the outcome, but have probably contributed to a delay in the relevant discussions being concluded. Right, first things first, that's nonsense. Because firstly, there was no campaign instigated by 2 or 3 individuals. Any individuals kind of going against anything Planet Ice wanted was potentially Ali Cree wanting to sell to Tony Smith, and then a bunch of Sheffield Steel Dogs fans who went, please don't kick our team out of the league, we really don't want that. So the idea that there was this really heavily coordinated campaign by a couple of individuals feels a little bit tin hat worthy, all things considered. But fair enough, I can understand why they get a bit grumpy about having to deal with all of that faff. Planet Ice would like the individuals involved in disseminating rumours or bullying social media staff and volunteers to reflect on the significant negative impact that the social media campaign has had on the health of the players, volunteers, owners, coaches and the EIHA, especially given the inaccuracy of a lot of the information. Completely out of context, that sentence makes sense. I would respectfully refer Planet Ice back to some of the actions of that organisation around the end of the Manchester Phoenix and what happened back in 2015 and negative campaigns and the impact that had on people as well. And that's not to say the Phoenix were completely innocent in that entire thing. Neil Morris made mistakes. They were involved in Red Hockey as well, and there was a lot of stuff that was said that shouldn't have been said, and there was a lot of stuff done that definitely should not have been done. But that is a tiny bit of pot calling the kettle black, all things considered. You're right, people shouldn't bully each other on social media. They shouldn't spread false information. But Planet Ice said nothing at all. They said nothing as to give anybody any idea of accuracy, what was going on. You can't tell people off after the fact and go, no, you're bullying us, if you won't say why or how they're doing it. People criticising you, especially a legitimate criticism, because like I say, I don't think Tony Smith necessarily is the right person to be involved in the national division. But some people did. And people can make a legitimate argument for that, and saying that you didn't want him involved in the national division, which was reported and never refuted, because it's not refuted here either. That's not a problem. Being criticised is only a problem if in the way you react to that criticism, because some of that criticism will be entirely justified. Sometimes you have to take the licks on the chin, and you're right. I feel very, very sorry for the person who had to sit there and read through all those social media comments. But as I said on Wednesday, just blocking a bunch of people who criticised you didn't make you look like you had taken the higher ground. It made Planet Ice look petty, because you had people involved in a really emotive situation, the potential loss of their team, the thing that they put their money, their passion, their energy into, and because you didn't offer a response, you let everybody sit there and think that you were going to take them away from them, and you're surprised that they're upset. That doesn't make sense. Apologies for not looking at the chat. We're just going to have another poke through some of these things. It should still be said, though, think about the words you do use on social media. You can be critical. you can be constructive in that criticism, and you can make a reasoned, robust, impassioned point to criticise somebody else without being an arse about it. That is possible. Where are we? It should be noted that the majority of the teams in the league are not run for profit, and that the owners contribute a significant amount of their time and own money ensuring their teams are competitive. Given the dedication of team owners and volunteers to sustain their teams through events such as COVID, it seems unfair to fans to suggest that the teams wouldn't act in the best interest of the sport. Now that is a tough one, because I think actually, again, on its own, as a paragraph, I don't necessarily see why that's a problem to anybody. I don't think that should be I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say. British hockey, for a lot of its course, is run off of goodwill. Volunteers and goodwill. Sure, there's money involved. Apparently 50k if you're Tony Smith and you want to get involved in the national division, as well as buying the Steel Dogs from Ali Cree. But there is a lot of stuff that goes on and people do for the love of it rather than for any massive amount of financial gain. I think the problem that Planet Ice will face from people there, and I think a reasonable criticism would be, the one team that Planet Ice owns in the national division is now not playing because they've pulled them out because the rink needs refurbishing, because it's not been refurbished since I started watching the Bison in 2005. I'll leave that one hanging in the air for you to make your own jokes. Let's have a quick look at the chat, just very, very briefly, and have a look at what we've got here, because I've got a bit to catch up on here. Would the Storm pay 50k if they drop? No, we've done that one. Solway is not for sale. Great to hear it, John, especially after all you've gone through. If you've not watched the interview on Sharks TV with Finn the Shark, please do. Recommended for fans of people who don't take themselves too seriously, and Sooty. Teams last season, we've done that one. How do you feel about the chairman of the National League having interests that directly conflict with some of the parties who have been making comment on the situation? My understanding, aside from the fact that the chairman of the National League has not been officially announced, but my understanding is that will probably be John Neville, given what's going on there, because he makes sense to be the chairman of the national division, given that the Bison aren't playing, so he can be at least have the veil of being a middleman in that sense. But ultimately, he's let them in. And I think that's worth remembering. He's let them in. I said I didn't feel that Tony Smith was right to be involved with it. But I also said it wasn't my decision. The people sat around the table clearly at one point didn't feel that this was the right thing to do. They were not happy about it. That is verifiable. That is reportable, and I've heard that from multiple sources. That initially the answer to Tony Smith being involved was no, but they've acquiesced. So clearly they either think it can work or are prepared to try to make it work. And maybe 10 versus 1, or 11 versus 1 technically, sorry, they feel that potentially something can be done about it. I suppose we're going to find out, aren't we? And Telford should lost their 16-17 regular season title. We have asterisks all round potentially there, Jamie. I'll leave that one for you. Cigala, I wonder how many national sides an EIHL team can own. Say Cardiff get Bristol and Guildford take Basingstoke. I would rather chew glass, but that's fine. Will Swindon, Bees and Raiders, for example, be free from an elite side? Potentially. I personally don't see Steve Nell ever selling up, so that'd be fun. And if so, will this negatively affect them in terms of competitiveness? Again, it depends how much money ends up getting put in. All the more reason for, in some ways, for something like a proper salary cap to be employed. So there we go. What happens there, I suppose, is kind of up to the owners. But I don't think, like I say, I believe there are teams that would be more likely to be sold than others, but it doesn't mean they have to be sold. I think that's a different kettle of fish, of course. How are Manchester exempt from paying a 50k fee? They would drop down from the IHL and have the same access to a larger budget. They'd be the same organisation. But what do they mean by operate becomes the issue there, Mac. Does operate mean control in the same way that... So the Steel Dogs being controlled by the Steelers is the same way that the Seattle Kraken control and operate the Coachella Valley Firebirds of the AHL, right? Because the Kraken own Coachella Valley. They own that organisation, right? The Washington Capitals in the NHL do not own the Hershey Bears. The Hershey Bears are a separately owned entity. They're actually owned by the chocolate company. And the affiliation agreement allows the Capitals to put in certain key members of the organisation, but the Capitals don't own Hershey. If Manchester leave the Elite League and move into the National Division, is that them operating a team, or are they a team outstanding in their own right? There's the question that needs to be answered there. That press release doesn't give us that information. But that there is a way, in my opinion, that opens a loophole for Manchester to not have to pay that fee. Manchester were never saints, but PI acting like the victims every time they get criticised for being douchebags. Yeah, fair enough. They own percentages of others, so I'm led to believe. I have no evidence for it, Matt. There's the issue. I know it's something that we've talked about. You and I have talked about that off stream, but I do not. There is no documentation in Company's House about that. That's all I can go on. Isn't their headquarters rink in Peterborough in desperate need of refurbishment as well with PI? Yep, Peterborough needs a good more than a lick of paint. Steelers fans are interested in watching their team on the ice, not in boardroom dramas. Most post-to-planet ice where an EIHA will let dogs play. And as I said, Paul, the big issue was... the big issue was... really, in a large chunk of this, the EIHA created the environment, but this wasn't EIHA's fault. Coachella. There's an A in there. I'm calling them Coachella if I want to. If someone other than Tony Smith made a bid for the Steel Dogs, would there have been the same furore? I don't think so. I think there would have been a furore to the same level, no. I said very openly that if Belfast had tried to buy the Steel Dogs, I would have had similar reservations, but I would have felt better about it because Belfast have had a better record with not speaking out against the quality of British players coming through. Had Cardiff done it, for example, and Todd Kelman has said some very daft things in the past about the quality of British players coming through, I would have felt the similar amount of unease. I think the question there is, would the other owners of the National Division been more willing in the immediacy to work with them? Because I kind of think that people would be more prepared to work with Todd Kelman. I feel that people might be more prepared to work with the folk from the Odyssey Trust and Steve Thornton than potentially with Tony Smith. And again, like I say, from my perspective as the person sitting on the outside, like poking at everything and looking at everything, I'd have my reservations about who got involved and their reasons for it, because at the moment Tony Smith bought the Steel Dogs, we don't really know what the plan is. And like I said, Tony Smith's previous words and actions speak to what his feeling is about the thing he's just bought. So I think there's a lot to be said about kind of getting something out of the Steelers now as an organisation as to what the plans for the Steel Dogs are. I think until we kind of know that, it's I think my reticence is going to stay until I feel like that question has been answered. All things considered. What we got the last bit of this press release. Let's just quickly go through the rest of it. In order to be transparent, Planet Ice does review its business model on a regular basis, and there is a strong business case for using rinks in the evenings for non-ice hockey events and activities in rinks that are capable of accommodating large crowds, and especially on Saturdays. While some people might be uncomfortable with the idea that rinks do not need league hockey to be sustainable, it's clear that being able to pivot and adopt new income streams has ensured the sustainability of venues, and especially post-COVID, and whilst in the middle of the current living standard situation. Ultimately, ice rinks are there to serve everyone within their local community, with the vast majority of people who use ice rinks attending for either recreational skating or learn to skate rather than to play or watch ice hockey. Right, here's where I get cross. Here is where I get very, very cross. Because there's a chunk there about reviewing business models and the like. And you might have noticed over the last little while, particularly at the Sky Dome, that Planet Ice have hosted a fair few more boxing events than usual. A company pivoting and trying to do different things, diversifying what it does, especially when you've got an arena like the Sky Dome, which, is not world-beating, but can be used for a chunk of stuff. Perfect sense. Absolute perfect sense. I'm really angry with this bit, with this part of this press release. Really, really angry about it because it is petulant. It's the only word. It's the most polite word I can use to describe this. Talking about events accommodating large crowds, especially on Saturdays, and the vast majority of people who use ice rinks attending for either recreational skating or learn to skate rather than to play or watch ice hockey. Now, I talked about it on Wednesday that Planet Ice effectively have British ice hockey over a barrel because there aren't that many ice rinks. Planet Ice operate a vast majority in England. They obviously don't operate any rinks in Wales. They don't operate any rinks in Scotland, and they don't operate any in Northern Ireland. With the vast majority of the sport in Great Britain being played in England, why? Who proofread this statement to say that? This is your statement to whom exactly? Because all you have done there is threaten British hockey. Why? Why have you threatened the sport? Fair enough if Planet Ice as an organisation will have business disagreements with people for whatever reason, right? And maybe the people at the top of Planet Ice, whether it's Mike Petru or I've forgotten the chap's surname. Is it Heath Roberts? But whoever, the operator, the people at the top of Planet Ice, if they've got a business disagreement with somebody about something, fine. That's absolutely fine. They're allowed to not like somebody, right? But why are you threatening all of us? Why are you threatening the entire sport? What does this serve? Why have you done it? The fact that part of this press release was allowed to be in the public is utterly, utterly bizarre. I said on Wednesday that Planet Ice's corporate communication at times is really bad. I said that they'd ceded the entire narrative to Tony Smith and the Steelers and everything like that because they said nothing when they could have. And I keep being told, and I've been told off the record by a lot of people, things couldn't be said. We talked about the fact there was probably legal stuff involved. There was legal stuff involved, from my understanding. They could have said something. They could have found a way to say something when their response is this. What are we supposed to think? When their response to the very emotive topic of potentially kicking out a team from the league, and like I say, there's words and phrases in here that have been used, like in that EIHA press release about the Steel Dogs being compliant. If they've broken the rules, tell us what rules they broke, right? And if somebody doesn't like that, what are they doing? Do you believe the threat of pulling ice time wasn't already used in the negotiating process? I'm sure it probably was somewhere. But why? Why would you do this? All you end up doing, when you already have massive amounts of bad will, and yeah, you're saying that it's because of false information, erroneous information, a campaign started by a few individuals. So your great idea to prove people wrong is to hold a gun to the head of the sport. Why? Why would you do that? It is utterly, utterly bizarre. We had poor corporate communication from saying nothing, and then when you speak, you do that. And here's the other thing. Hockey may not be your most profitable enterprise. I get that. That's very much my understanding, having spoken to people. But I would bet my life and my house that it is the door through which many people come to those things that you talk about. The absolute absurdity of that sort of level of threat to the entire sport in this country when you sponsor the league. You are the title sponsor. It is the Planet Ice National Division. And that is how you want to speak to your other teams, your stakeholders, and your biggest stakeholder, the players and the fans. What are you doing? Be angry about the situation. Not like how it's turned out, that is fine. But what is this? What is this? Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The absolute nerve of it. What have we ended with here? Ultimately, ice rinks are there to serve everyone within their local community, with the vast majority of people who rather for recreational skating learn to skate rather than play or watch ice hockey. Why do they learn to skate? We look forward to 11 teams participating in the Planet Ice National Ice Hockey League National Division this season and wish all the teams the best of luck. Oh my giddy aunt, what a... Right. Well, there we are. We've gone through both press releases and I've given myself an aneurysm. That Planet Ice press release at the top makes a lot of sense. And they've at least, like Tom Graham put in the chat earlier, they have the right to say their piece on this. Because actually, you know what? If they've copped a lot of flack, they 100% have the right of reply. No question about it. Right? No question about it. In the same way, when I did my article about the Sportle bits and pieces in October of last year, before I published that, I went to the EIHA and said, I am writing this article. I have X number of sources that can say that you have not gone through your own processes properly to do that, and members of the board were not aware what some of you were doing with Sportle. The EIHA gave me a quote. Should be noted they didn't refute a single bit of my reporting. And then I published it, right? Planet Ice having their right of reply is absolutely fine. They are allowed to do that. That last bit is ridiculous. It is the shoutings of an angry child because something has happened that you've not gone your way. And I get it, right? That I could see why, right? If you run Planet Ice, say you run Planet Ice, and you spend a week and a half being told that you're ruining the sport, you're stealing our team, and actually you don't think you're doing that. And let's be honest, there's stuff that we don't know. 100% there is stuff that has not been made public in this situation that we don't know. And if you think that actually you're the good guy in the situation, you're being told that you're the villain, I would 100% understand that anger. And I get why they would want to say something along the lines of like, saying nasty things about us isn't good, don't bully people. That is not how you do it. Oh my days. Oh my word. Let's threaten the entire sport and remind you that actually we make more money doing other things so we can pull the rug from under you. We know. You could shut up shop and kick all hockey out tomorrow. We know that. We're not idiots. Everyone active doesn't have the ability to pull every ice rink away from you. There aren't enough independent operators. We saw what happened to the Community Trust on the Isle of Wight when they tried to run Ride and they got shafted by the people who owned the building. We know. Just because you can point a gun to everybody's head doesn't mean you should. Like, what? Oh, my days. Raiders B, Solway, Peterborough, Telford didn't share that press release. They did not. I love this stupid sport. And I have done. I've loved ice hockey from the moment I watched Dmitry Kramarenko score a penalty shot shootout win for the Rostock Piranhas against the Schönheider Wölfe in December of 2004. Stole my heart, never looked back. I came back to Britain, and the more I've got involved with this sport, I've been really, really fortunate to be able to meet a lot of really excellent, dedicated, passionate people, right? And they do so much good stuff, and there's so many creative people, smart people, analytical people who do wonderful things. Like, I'm going to blow their trumpet anyway because I can. Solway, the new owners at Solway, have hit a massive home run everything they've tried this year. They're not going to get it all right, but they've tried a lot of really good stuff. I'm gonna make him cringe for a second. Think of everything Joe Scutts did when Spordle absolutely wet the bed. He pulled the entire NHL stats out of the bin in a fortnight, right? And I think of all of those volunteers for places, all those folks who do the 50-50s and booster clubs and supporters clubs. I think of like everybody who gives up their time to be a steward. There's so many good people in British ice hockey. I think of everything like Telford. There's a great example. I think of Telford and where they were and how the guys there, and maybe I don't know what you might think of them personally, but think of what Tom Watkins and the team there have done to pull Telford out of the mire when Red Hockey left them on the floor, knocked out, right? And Telford won the first 2 National Division titles by right from a team built from the ground up. There's so much good in this sport here. And we kneecap ourselves again and again and again with just this stupid nonsense. Planet Ice are a massive stakeholder in British ice hockey. They own a team in this league. They provide ice for so many teams in the elite. They have Coventry and Manchester in the elite league, Peterborough, Milton Keynes, Bristol. They own Basingstoke, Solent, and the MK Thunder. So much. And that's their response to not getting an outcome they want or feeling like they've been treated badly, is to lash out like my son does when I tell him it's time to turn his tablet off. What is that? And you're going to say, Anthony, you're getting overly emotional about this. Where's the rationale? Where's the rational Anthony gone? Where's the one who likes to pick apart and pull apart and analyse these bits and pieces? Well, we've done that. We've just spent an hour picking and pulling apart these things. And I've reread that last bit of that press release again, and I'm still pissed off by it. Because it's wrong. Because some things are just wrong. And breathe. Sorry, everybody, but I needed to get that off my chest. Apparently. Let's have a quick squint at the chat. Do you think? I think a lot of people who go skating and do learn to skate do it because they watch hockey. Get rid of the hockey and you lose a chunk of them and future customers. Agreed, Luke. It's one of those things that feels an empty threat. In reality, they're unlikely to ever take that step, but it's a huge bullet as owners can't take the risk of calling their bluff. It's fine. PI set fire to their own house, and then tried lighting it up with petrol. That's funny. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was shared by clubs themselves, right? If so, unless it was edited out, why didn't someone tell them and say, hold up, we ain't sharing this, why are you threatening us? I mean, as Max mentioned there, a few teams didn't. The hockey might not make much money, but I bet the bars and cafes take more than public skating. Potentially. Why couldn't they come out and say, we are looking over the situation, let you know in due course? Thank you! That's all they needed to do. And that's not just Planet Ice, that's the rest of the owners of the National Division. If there was an issue with the Steel Dogs and they weren't happy with Tony Smith getting involved, that's all they needed to say. But like I said, if they were going to kick the Steel Dogs out of the league, which was a very real possibility, Bob Westerville's reporting isn't wrong there. I'm happy to... he is correct. They needed to say why and what for. At some point, or that at least that they were investigating something and that there was a situation that needed to be resolved before things could be done. Telling people what you are doing is not bad. Thanks, Anthony. You're very welcome, John. I know PI own bases, but did own any other clubs in the league? Like I say, Sigala, Mac believes that they do. I have no evidence to say that they do. Can you clarify what teams you believe get a vote in the owners group's meeting process? Who I believe? All of them. I believe every team should have a vote. The only person that should end up technically having 2 votes is Steve Nell, because Steve Nell is the only person who owns 2 teams. They let 3 of the 4 top non-arenas top 4 non-arenas in England, Coventry, Manchester, MK, to have their ice. What would happen if Manchester and Coventry were to drop down? Ooh. That is an interesting one. What would happen? I don't think Coventry dropped down, for starters. Although, if we ended up with an 8 import second tier like the BNL, there is a much higher likelihood of that happening. I think if the Blaze dropped from a 15 to a 3 import league, the Blaze would fold pretty much straight away. What would happen in Manchester and Coventry with the drop down? You edge towards what is effectively a league made only of Planet Ice rinks. Eventually becomes the issue there, and I think the big problem is that ultimately a monopoly is a bad thing. Whatever criticism you may want to make of capitalism, and believe me, I've got a few, but ultimately monopolies are bad in a capitalist society. The crux of it is that capitalism thrives on competition, right? And the idea that only having a league where teams are based out of one kind of rink, aside from the fact I think you end up with, you might have an okay product, but you're not having the best you can do. And why also, given the fact that Swindon and Leeds shared that statement, Leeds being a Planet Ice rink, of course, why would you nix Swindon from a league that had Planet Ice teams in it? Because Swindon ain't a Planet Ice rink. You might have to be a bit more specific as to what I've said that's not true there, Mac. I've said an awful lot in the last 75 minutes. No need to apologise. Like a lot of us, we've been investing in sport for years. That isn't a threat to a sport, but a threat to something we hold emotionally, financially, and physically invested. Yeah, I don't like being like that. I really don't. But that is just like, it beggars belief. It beggars belief why anybody thought that was an acceptable thing to leave in there. Because it's just silly. It's just silly. Like I say, Matt, you're going to have to be a little bit more specific as to what's not true. A monopoly is a bad thing. We're living in that. What are we living in now? Well, let's have a look at the National Division. Everyone active run Slough and Romford. Dumfries Council run Dumfries, run the Ice Bowl for the Sharks. Better Leisure, I want to say, run Swindon. So we're not living in a monopoly now. It's close to it, maybe a little too close to it. Not everyone gets a vote. Then what's the point? It's literally pointless. The whole idea of an owners group is all the owners get involved. It's dumb. It's literally nonsensical. I know he's been watching, but if Mr. Strange would like to refute that point, I'd really appreciate that. Let's have an exclusive live on the stream. That would be fun. Outside of hockey, life is a monopoly. That's oddly profound for a Sunday night, Andrew. Yes, Better Leisure. There we go. Thank you, because they operate the rink in. I don't know if they still operate the rink in Streatham. I think that might have changed hands, but certainly Better Leisure operate the rink in operating the rink in Swindon. Every team gets a vote. Some votes require 75% to pass, others 100%. No one's confirmed it to me either way. So if any of the owners, would like to let me know, hi, would really appreciate that. Very happy to put people right. I'm just checking my bits and pieces for my own sanity here, just to see. No one sent me any other. No one sent me any other messages. Apart from Mr. Strange sending me an iced tea gift, which is a bit of an interesting one. But yeah, that's where we are at the moment. The biggest and most important part of this is that the Steel Dogs are in. Sheffield Steel Dogs hang around, and I believe having them in the league is a good thing. Anthony, that's from Graham. Sweet. Oh, there we go from Mr. Strange. All owners get a vote. But remember, we are the new kids on the block, so can only comment on our experience thus far. What meetings have you not been to? This is what happens, John, when you send Finn the Shark into meetings. He doesn't talk. Doesn't tell you what's going on. So there we go. Confirmation there that apparently owners do get votes. All the owners do get a vote, apparently. So let's say there isn't conglomerate ownership within the league. Would you say that there is third-party direction on how voting should go? Now, we talked about this on Wednesday, didn't we? That Planet Ice obviously can have a massive, massive impact on the direction of a lot of things. But it depends on how independent we truly believe those teams that are in Planet Ice rinks but not owned by Planet Ice are. Do I think Planet Ice is going to direct Steve Nell? I mean, that's going to be hard to believe. Do I think Planet Ice are going to be able to push Richie Hargreaves into something he doesn't want to do? The guys at MK? The guys at MK who are sitting on top of a massive amount of money, it should be said. Again, go look at Company's House, people. There definitely needs to be some untying of some knots about conflicts of interest. 100%. 100% there needs to be. All of it's published for transparency. Now there's where we'll end up, where you and I think we'll agree, Matt. The transparency that you and I are asking for here, we're not going to get. I don't think we're ever going to get that, and we're certainly not going to get it when they're operating their own entity. Potentially, we'll get the results of the things we need to be told about. Tony now own the Sheffield teams in D1 or D2, just the Dogs. Just the Dogs, Sigala. The Scimitars in Div 1, the Titans in Div 2 are part of the wider Sheffield Ice Hockey Academy running setup, is my understanding. And the Steel Dogs are separate of that. Surely the vote on the Dogs should have been 100% against, as per Scutsy's comment. Well, they must have changed their opinion because they let the guy in, but what was it in the past? Would it be nice to know? Yes. Are they going to tell us? I venture they're not going to tell us. Should we be told why initially they were against him coming in and then weren't? I think it would be good for people to understand why this whole mess happened. I think that's important. I don't believe every team wanted the Dogs out. My understanding is that initially the response en masse was no. That's what I'm going on, what I've been told. But I think people in their heart of hearts, all teams have equal votes. The votes are published to the EIHA. The Rector of the Bees has come into the chat very, very kindly and given us an answer. I am obliged to you, Graham. Thank you very much for doing that. Hockey has always been a closed shop. Feels very close at the moment. That vote should have been unequivocally 100%. Now that is an interesting one. Should it be 100%? Should it be a unanimous vote to kick a team out of the league? You're going to hate me for this one, Matt, but there's an argument both ways on that one. I don't think it should be a simple majority, no, but a 75% one I don't necessarily think wouldn't be unacceptable to some people in some quarters. It should be said on that one. (9:20) I do believe the Baha men wanted the Dogs out. Oh, yes. Well done, Joe. Well done. That's brilliant. Thank you. I can appreciate that utter top-tier dad joke. That is beautiful. I think that's the bit of brevity we needed. Lovely stuff. Thank you, buddy. I think we can all appreciate that one. Terrible, terrible, terrible joke, but funny. You know what? We'll throw the door open. I'm going to cut this off at 9:30. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Chuck it all in. Questions, comments, anything else anybody wants to throw out, let's do it. Please link us to these votes. Will they be published at the EIHA? Didn't necessarily say they'd be published to us. And as you and I aren't members of the EIHA, are we allowed to see them? Teams in or out requires 100%. Other things require 75%. There we go. Thank you, Graham. Can't argue with that. Tell me your final thoughts. I was about to go Jerry Springer there for a minute. So, my final thoughts on this one. Like I say, it's good the Dogs are in. It's really good the Dogs are still playing, because I think, like I say, I think the Steel Dogs as a franchise under Ali Cree's ownership have been an asset to British hockey. Not just the EIHA leagues, not just the national division. I think they've been an asset to British hockey. It's been a franchise that's kind of waxed and waned a bit. Thank you, Jamie. I'll mention that in a bit. I think it's a franchise that's waxed and waned, and obviously we went through, God rest his soul, the Andre Payet years, where it was very rough and ready, and things like Ben Bounds and Yanis Ozolin's doing the job all by themselves while everybody else decided it was a boxing match. And then we had the Greg Wood years, where it was much more grit and grind, but some very good hockey played into the bargain as well. And I think of that Steel Dogs team of last year that was, inconsistent, I think is probably the fairest way to do it. But you think of some of the talent that was there, and I don't just mean the top end guys like Bissonnette and Hewitt and things like that. And again, God rest his soul, Alex Graham, the fantastic things he did on the ice. Or Dimitri Zamastra, who's been an all-star in this league. You know what I think of when I think of things like the Steel Dogs? I think of people like Brady Doxey. I think of that level's worth of stuff. I think of watching Liam Kirk as a 16-year-old. I think of Ben Morgan coming across from Manchester when Manchester went down. I think of Lewis Bell and how he grew as a player, and the like. But you end up with this kind of situation that we've ended up in now, and it's just a giant mess. And it 100%, no one hits a six every ball, and that's absolutely fine. No one gets everything right. I think it's unfair to expect perfection out of people, and people expect too much of people sometimes, right? But this situation could be managed better. It could have been managed better. And people will say, Robert Dowd, another one there. I think of the people that, I think of people who've said to me a lot recently that stuff couldn't be said. And I think my response to kind of one person I was speaking to is that there is things could have been said to not completely cede the narrative to one side of the situation. I think things could have been said to keep people, yes, it would have been a holding statement, but a holding statement would have been better than no statement. And I get, right, that people sometimes think the best thing to do is to just say nothing until everything is done. And there are some situations in life where that is entirely the right thing to do, right? I get that. But this wasn't one of them, if we're 100%. If we're 100% honest. And ultimately, like I say, any reservations I have about his side, and I'm going to hold them. I'm going to hold on to those reservations the entire time, because the guy who's now in charge of the Sheffield Steel Dogs, for me, one of the best franchises in this division at giving young talent a chance, has said words that show he doesn't believe it's there. He doesn't believe in the young talent coming through that has the ability to play in the Elite League. I think he's wrong. And not only do I think he's wrong, I think he's really wrong. Like catastrophically wrong. And so I'm going to be wary of that. But more importantly, the Sheffield Steel Dogs are a beacon near the top of a hill. I'm not going to say the top of the hill in Sheffield, because they're not, because kids want to play for the Steelers, right? That's not unreasonable. But at the top of that structure in East Sheffield, whether you're an under 10 or a stick and puck kid learning to play, at the moment, with the way British hockey is, the achievable, attainable goal, in reality, if you're a Sheffield kid and if you want to stay in Sheffield, is being a Sheffield Steel Dog. And the fact the Steel Dogs are still here is a good thing. The rest we will examine another day. The fact that the Sheffield Steel Dogs are still here, that will sit for me. Do the Bison get a vote even though they don't have a team in the league? They are in the league. They are in the league. They're just not. They are mothballed for a season. They are not withdrawn from the national division. They are not playing, but they are still in the national division. Very important distinction. Same way as when Manchester was still in the Elite League but mothballed. Why aren't Slough allowed in the league? They have a home rink and want in. There'd be no buy-in, and they have the finance and would run a Brit-only roster. I venture the issue that would probably fall down with is what is their business model to make them competitive and financially viable to do so. There would be an issue for Slough. How can you do it? If they could prove that, I've got no issue with it. 2 teams in the national division in the same rink means nothing. Means nothing to me. I'm used to watching Australian hockey. Sydney and Melbourne have 2 teams playing in the same rink. All those teams survive. It's doable. It's 100% doable. But the Jets would need to prove that they would be financially viable and competitive running a roster of all Brits. My understanding is that they wanted to run a very, very young roster of Brits and that it wasn't going to work. They were told no. In a statement I've seen, Ali Cree didn't want to sell, and potentially he didn't, but if, as we're led to believe, there was financial issues with the Dogs, then what you want and what you do are different things. Where was the group concern for the ownership group over the past 9 years during the EPL and EIHL? Where was the concern then? Pass. That's a question for them. I think it's a strange one because, well, then again, they've not had this kind of existential crisis thrust upon them from the Elite League because the Elite League was hands off. They weren't interested. The teams were interested in picking the few players that they thought were good enough, despite tons of them being actually any good. There's been loads of them ready to go if they'd actually bothered to do anything with them. But that's the philosophical difference I think I have with somebody like Tony Smith. My opinion is that the Elite League needs to engage better in the development of players because they want people completely ready for the Elite League, and that's not how that works. Very few NHLers are NHLers straight away. They get developed. Think of the Detroit Red Wings. How many Detroit Red Wings players, and there's a few obviously, Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, who just go straight into the NHL roster at the moment. But how many Detroit Red Wings regulars, how many come through Grand Rapids, their AHL team? Jamie, EIHL 2 would work in the sense that you would have it would be no promotion, no relegation. I assume it would not operate like DEL and DEL2, but you would have cooperation agreements between a team in the Elite League and a team in the National Division, where players could easily go up and down, kind of like the German Third Elite Sense system, and you would, like I say, almost kind of be like a British AHL. Some teams would be owned by Elite League teams. Some teams would be independent entities with like an agreement to work with a team, and you'd kind of run it like that. Maybe 8, maybe 9 imports. It shouldn't be 10 if you're going to do that. I don't think that would be how I think it would work. Right, 28 minutes past. This is your final call. Chuck it all in. Chuck it all in, please. That'd be. Surely Tony was the best option to talk them out of the red for the league as a whole. From a financial aspect, I probably can't deny it. From a involvement in what the league has been about, which is a low import, higher quality as possible place for British players to play and younger players to develop and get lots of ice time. I don't think a guy saying that Brits aren't who said that people aren't interested in British players, are interested in the imports, I don't think is the best person for that kind of product. You wouldn't hire somebody who races monster trucks to look at to operate your classic car show. Even in the Heineken days, Durham got relegated, but the league was extended to keep them in the league. Yeah. So many burying their heads in the sand, it's literally laughable. Cloak and dagger nonsense, operated behind a curtain of silence. Well, if you scroll back up, one of the directors of a team in the National Division has said there is no cloak and dagger. So I will leave you to have that discussion with them, because me being me, I will retain my usual amount of cynicism about this entire thing. "9:30. You've got 10 seconds to get anything else in you want to say before we get out of here. Hopefully now what we can do is we can try and put this nonsense to bed. The proof will be in the pudding. Like I said, Tony, open invitation. I've got some questions. I'd really like them answered. If you want to come on and do it, let's do it. Nobody else, Tony. It's you I want. I think you're the best person to have these discussions with. Nobody else. Otherwise, a big thank you. If Tony wasn't the right option, who was? Somebody who believes in the quality of the players coming through and their ability to play at the highest level they possibly can do. I don't have that answer. So what actually made Tony make his decision to buy? He saw an opportunity. He saw an opportunity to do something to help the Sheffield Steelers. He's not interested. My feeling is that he's not massively interested in the wider scope of things. He's interested in helping the Sheffield Steelers. And I can't blame him for that. He owns the Sheffield Steelers. But I think there is a responsibility within that to the wider sport that you're involved in. That's just me. People will argue that I'm overly moralistic about it. I don't care. That's my opinion. That's how I feel about these things. This is not the open market. If you trade and you operate in people's emotions and passion, there are different rules that you play by. Maybe you do have to operate as a business, but you can operate as a business with the correct intentions. So do it that way. But yeah, who's the right option? You, Mac. You should have done it. We will call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source now for pretty much anything across the NIHL and whatever the national division's about to become in the next year or so. Long form pieces across this season. I'm going to be going wherever, anywhere can take me. I will watch games from any division up and down the length and breadth of this country. And now we have fixtures. Solway, I'm coming at some point in November. So you better be prepared for me, or at least worn thin. But written pieces, hockey stories, long form content, both written and audio from across the wide ranging world that this beautiful sport provides us, as well as the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast and Dice Hockey, our tabletop ice hockey simulation game. It's free to download. You can play it with bits and pieces around your house at home, and you can get a dice app on your mobile phone to play it with your friends and family for a bit of a laugh. All I ask, if you do download Dice Hockey and you enjoy it, please do make a donation to Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's. It's literally awful. Please, can we find a way to research getting rid of it? That'd be appreciated. But a ton of stuff there at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook is Banners on the Wall. Twitter is @BannersOTW. The links are all down there in the description, as well as the link to buy me a coffee. Like I say, doing different things this year. There's some increased costs. This is me just passing the busking hat around. Nothing is going to change. Banners on the Wall is never going behind a paywall. But if you'd like to contribute to the upkeep of what I'm doing here, that'd be massively appreciated if you enjoy it. And like I say, over there as well, have you got a piece you'd like to commission? There's options there for that, as well as something else that's on the horizon that's coming out next week. So you teams who produce a program, keep your eyes open. I've got something that might be of interest to you. But all of that is down there in the description. Of course, you're watching live on YouTube, so make sure that you hit the like button for the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share bits and pieces with your friends. Wednesday nights, 8 PM throughout the NIHL season, the What's Current stream, the first and only live show to cover all 5 divisions of the NIHL structure here on YouTube for Banners on the Wall. I think I needed to get a chunk of that off my chest. I think we've done good work here, so thank you very much for coming in and joining along. Hopefully now, at least for a couple of moments, we can put this to one side and get back to talking about what we want to talk about, which is the actual hockey. We're only a few weeks out now. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then please do be safe. As my friend Scotty Watts would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long, till next time. One day, some of this nonsense will stop. Until then, those of us who believe in it, we'll just keep fighting on. Take care, everybody. See you soon.